right, take two. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 70 of the Hoop Venue Podcast. My name is Tyler, and as always, I'm joined by my great friend Sean. The most recent news in the NBA broke just, what was that, last night? Trae Young traded to the Washington Wizards for CJ McCollum, Corey Kispert, and not a single pick or young asset. One of the more interesting trades. I was kind of curious to see what Trey Young would go for. This whole process happened really fast. Like, I feel like the writing's kind of been on the wall with the Trey Young Atlanta era for quite a while now. We've had multiple discussions talking about what they should do, what steps they should take, whether they should continue to build around Trey or not. And then in a matter of like a week, it's okay, the Hawks and Trey are agreeing to look for a trade. Trey wants to go to the Wizards. The Wizards are the only team interested in Trey. And then they basically salary dump him to the Wizards for, I mean, not to say CJ McCollum's not a good player, that Corey Kispert isn't a really good role player. I actually really like Corey Kispert. But just super interesting how this whole thing played out and what this means for both the Hawks and the Wizards moving forward. Sean, my initial question is essentially just like, what was your gut reaction to seeing the trade details?
My gut reaction is when I posted on Twitter. It was basically, damn, I didn't know his value was at the floor. I mean, we knew it was low. We knew it was really low. But that was also like, dang, not any CJ McCollum salary dump and an okay role player, a perfectly fine role player that should fit into like a Quinn Snyder offense and Corey Kispert, like, that's it. So like there's a couple different angles you can like look at this trade from. Where do you want to start? Do you want to kind of go from Trey's point of view, the Hawks' point of view, or the Wizards' point of view?
I think we should
like
start
the
with
league and more concept, if that makes sense.
I think we can end off on like the league talk because everything we're going to talk about with Trey, the Wizards, the Hawks is kind of going to lead into that, I feel like. First thing I kind of want to talk about is really just where Trey stands as a player right now, because he's had this really interesting arc where he steps into Atlanta as a franchise player, immediately given to the keys to the offense, right? Like, you have the free reins to do essentially whatever you want on the court. We're going to give you 80 touches as a rookie. And about halfway through his rookie season, he kind of figured it out. It was like, I'm a one-man offensive machine. If I turn this corner off this screen, like, there's nothing a defense can do to stop me from basically just giving my team a good shot, whether it's me taking a floater, me taking a pull-up jumper, me lobbing it to the big man, or me spraying it out to a corner shooter. It was essentially just like the easiest game of cat and mouse, where if Trey Young's man got hit by a screen for like 5 years, Atlanta's offense was guaranteed to produce like a 118 offensive rating with him on the court. It was just like set in stone. No matter who he was sharing the court with, it could have been Clint Capella and a bunch of non-shooters. It could have been Bogey, Kevin Huerter, and John Collins in a more offensive-centric lineup. But that period of time from 2019 to 2022, Trey Young was just straight up one of the best offensive players in the league. Like, there was not really a debate. He's giving you 29, 30 points a game, 10 assists a game. He's like 2 or 3% ahead of league average efficiency every year from 2020 to 2022, hitting the pull-up three at like a 35, 36% clip, 50% from mid-range, close to that range. Just an absurd creator and offensive floor raiser. But I think what happened, and we can get more into the specifics of where it actually all went wrong and what changed, is the league kind of started to catch up on Trey Young's style of play, what he wanted to do offensively, how he wanted to operate. And it's a natural progression that we see from every star player. Like, think about when teams started to meet Steph Curry with a lot more physicality, bump him off his spot, hold him off the ball. And Steph Curry countered by beefing up and essentially just becoming a bodybuilder. And it like there were some rough patches in there where, like, I don't want to say he had like slumps as a shooter, but the 3-point shot did, and the agility didn't feel as dynamic. And there was kind of a transitional period. And then it all culminated in 2021, where it was like, oh my gosh, this is basically peak Steph Curry, but really strong. This happens with essentially every great player. The problem, I think, for Trey Young is teams kind of figured out how to slow down his style of offense, and then he didn't progress in any area. He didn't improve the rim finishing. His pull-up shooting has gotten less efficient. He hasn't gotten to the line more than he used to. So I just think as the league has gotten better offensively, the bar has gotten higher. As teams have figured it out, along with his own lack of progression, it's just gotten to a point where the offense isn't what it was, and that's kind of where I want to start the conversation today.
Yeah, I think you brought it up. The 2022 season is very clearly just peak Trae Young.
Yeah.
Even there were glimpses of it in 2024. That was his most recent, like most efficient 3-point shooting season from volume. Shot 37% from three, which is kind of insane if you calculate the volume of threes he's taking, also the level, the degree of difficulty of shots that Trae Young took or has consistently taken over the duration of his career. But like we're just highlighting 2022, 2024, but really, really hammering home that 2022 season. He was relative true shooting plus 3%, shot 38% from three. I never really cared about the turnovers of Trae, especially peak Trae. Same reason why I don't care about turnovers for Luka. Now, it's an added bonus if you're a Tyrese Halliburton that is going to have these 12, assist nights, touching the ball 100 times or whatever, and never really turning the ball over, or Brunson even. And the assist volume's down. But, same kind of thought process. You're touching the ball 90 plus times and never turning it over. That's an added plus in its own right. But your Trays and your Lukas at their peaks, I never really worry about the turnovers because the types of passes Trey's throwing, the level of attention, you can never play drop. He's just a pull-up nightmare. And to a certain extent, you're still not going to play drop on Trae, especially a deeper drop, because you're still worried about the threat of him being able to just walk into a pull-up three and get hot. But I think a couple of things are somewhat noteworthy is this season, per 100 possession is also his lowest rim assist numbers per 100 possessions, where 2021, Trae Young, 7.1 rim assists per 100 possessions. Last year was 7.4 rim assists, actually, per 100 possessions. This year is a whole one assist down, and part of that could be due to the transition process, if you will, for Atlanta and leaning into more Jalen Johnson hoops. But that kind of leads into the other problem with Trae Young, where he consistently has shown, and granted, DeJounte and Trae was just not a good fit in general, and they admitted to that, very openly by trading DeJounte to New Orleans. But still, the problem kind of remained. It was, okay, cool, Trae and DeJounte, neither one can really play off the ball. They're both kind of inefficient jump shooters, so we'll trade DeJounte. That never really cleaned up the issue that Trae is also an inefficient jump shooter, especially now, that also cannot play off the ball because he's not this dynamic spot-up threat that isn't this ultra-elite decision-maker off the catch, low-key. And he's also this below-the-rim, inefficient finisher at the rim that's kind of waiting or kind of hoping to get bailed out by a foul call, or we're falling back on a 37% at best floater. Like, it just leads for the Hawks to kind of get to this boiling point where Jalen Johnson's balling. Let's go and, let's give ourselves some flexibility to go out and see what we want to do with the summer. The Pelicans are not a good team. There's even potential rumors about the Pelicans moving on from Zion at the deadline or in this, whatever the case may be. So you're going to have a great pick in the draft. You're going to have more cap space. It's going to give them about $30 extra million in theoretical cap space. What you use that on, who knows? It's not going to be a star. The days of those, the days of high spending free agents are kind of over. But yeah, Trae just never really improving his game. At the very least, being just a better off-ball player. Being a better off-ball player kind of changes the dynamic a lot, but you're an inefficient, primarily needing 100 touches ball handler that's 6 foot, that can't finish at the rim, that's a bad defender, and you can't play off the ball consistently. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think this is we could save this conversation for later. I'll shut up finally after this. I don't think it's a small guard thing. I think Trae is the extreme of small guards can't work. He's the extreme form of it. I don't think it's a small guard thing. It's Trae is an extremity of it.
Yeah, you said a lot there that I agree with. Like, you made some really good points. I want to back up for a second and talk about what you brought up with the turnovers, because I do think specifically the two guys you brought up, Trae and Luka, is really interesting because those are two guys with a very strong signal that their teams turn the ball over less when they're on the court. So they might individually pick up 4 or 5 turnovers, but because they're handling the ball 90 to 100 times and making all of the risky passes that their teammates no longer have to because they're on the court, their teams will turn it over like 13 or 14 times instead of 15 or 16 while they're on the bench. So they're still positively influencing the possession game in that way. However, another signal that you see with Trae and Luka in particular that you don't really see with other great passers. Like, who are some of the best passers in the league? You've got Halliburton, Jokic, LaMelo Ball. I'm definitely blanking on some names. Cade Cunningham. Trae and Luka are the only two, and James Harden too. Trae and Luka are the only two who really consistently have the signal where their teams get less assists when they're on the court. And I think that's a function of their extreme style of play, where it's like, we're going to run so much pick and roll that, like, if our team assists on a shot, I'm typically the one assisting on it. Like, obviously there's some hockey assists in there. There's some like putbacks in there that you could consider that what should be assisted, but obviously aren't because it's coming off the rim. But in general, you have this strong signal with Trae Young and Luka, where it's like their teams don't move the ball as well, they don't pass as much, and they don't assist on as many shots collectively when they're on the court. And also another part of that too is because both of them self-create so many shots. So I don't want to make it sound like that's just a negative thing. Like, a lot of it is the fact that they're both taking like 20 shots a game that just are just all off the dribble. So their own scoring isn't being assisted on. But it's a really interesting signal. And I think Trae and Luka being such extremities together and having the same sort of statistical signal makes it an easy comparison to show why a Trae Young offense has such a hard ceiling. And it's the fact that when Luka's running his spread pick and roll game over and over and over again, if you let him play in structure, he's going to give you efficient results so easily every single time. Because if he knows where the help's going to come from, like if you're not throwing him curveballs, if he knows what reads he's going to have to make on autopilot, he's just simply maybe the best at that in NBA history. But Trae Young's also right there in terms of, if you let him operate on autopilot, you let him see where the help's going to come from, you show him the same coverage on 3 straight possessions, he's going to pick you apart, and that's where you get these efficient 30 and 10 games. And I think that right there is what's really changed in the NBA over these past few years. You go back to like the turn of the decade, 2020, 2021, the average regular season defense was still primarily just going to show you deep drop coverage. There wasn't as much switching, there wasn't as much hedging or trapping. It was mostly just like, we have this anchor big, he's going to drop back, and we're going to try and force ball handlers to take long twos. So then you had these guys like Trae Young and Dame who could turn the corner and just blitz you with pull-up jumpers or with floaters or with quick shovel passes, or in Trae's case, and really this relates more to James Harden, I turn the corner, my rolling big is right next to me on my hip, now it's a 2-on-1, whatever you do, you're making the wrong decision, cat and mouse. And then you get to the 2021 playoffs, and I think Trae kind of establishes himself as a playoff riser in that run. But when you really dive into the tape of what was happening during those 3 rounds, it was essentially just a continuation of the regular season, just with more intensity. The Knicks had a center rotation of Taj Gibson and Nerlens Noel. And Tom Thibodeau likes to ice the pick and roll sometimes. He'll occasionally throw out a hedge, but for the most part, those guys are just going to deep drop. So Trae Young, all series long, gets to turn the corner and make those same reads that he was making all season long. Second round against Philly, Joel Embiid, same thing. Obviously, he's being met at the point of attack by the length of Ben Simmons, and I don't want to take away from that because Ben Simmons was a phenomenal point of attack defender at the time. But again, Joel Embiid's sitting like 10 feet back from the screen. So when Trae Young turns the corner, it's right back to square one. Then you get to the conference finals, and you have the most extreme drop defense we've ever seen in NBA history, the Milwaukee Bucks in 2021. Brook Lopez, 30 feet back, not even stepping out of the restricted area on some of these pick and rolls. So Trae can just walk into pull-up threes. He gets that 40, I think it was 48 and 11 game in game 1. And obviously he gets hurt and doesn't get to finish out that series at full strength and whatnot. But the point I'm trying to make is that the 2021 playoff run was almost fool's gold in a way, when you let Trae Young operate on autopilot and play within the structure of a pick and roll heavy offense with drop coverage, and you've got weapons alongside him, he's going to absolutely cook you. The 2022 playoffs is where everything kind of changed because Miami does not play a vanilla defense. They were like, all right, Bam, you're going to blitz some of these, you're going to hedge some of these. Sometimes it's going to be a high drop, sometimes a deep drop, sometimes we're going to zone them up, sometimes we're going to switch. Every single pick and roll was different. They consistently mixed up the point of attack defender. Sometimes it was Kyle Lowry, sometimes it was Max Strus, sometimes it was PJ Tucker. So they just threw a curveball over and over and over again at Trae Young. And what happened is instead of being an autopilot within the structure pick and roll operator, he had to be a problem solver. And I think that's the big separator between him and Luka. When you throw these curveballs at Luka, not only does he see the game at a much higher level, the physical advantages that he has are just on another level. Like the fact that he's just a legit 6'8" creator who's got like 70 pounds on Trae. Whereas when Trae starts to meet these physical switches and these big lengthy defenders, he doesn't have the burst to get around them. He doesn't have the height to see over the defense and make tough shots or make tough skip passes over the gap help. And Miami just completely rattled Trae. In that 2022 first round, he averaged 15 points and 6 assists, 6.2 turnovers, 32% from the field, 18% from three, 46% true shooting. And I think that series is what marked the shift because from that point on, the league started trending towards doing more of what Miami did in that series against Trae Young. Now you fast forward to 2026, on a night-to-night basis, there's basically no deep drop coverage. It's almost all switching, high dropping, and hedging. There's bigger, lengthier, more physical defenders on Trae. There's more ball pressure. They're picking him up 50 feet out and not letting him get within that structure of a nice pick and roll. And like I said, he hasn't progressed in his skill set at all. So the league just figured out, hey, if we stop sitting in this deep drop coverage, we force Trae to be a problem solver instead of an autopilot operator. You just don't see the same sort of signal in terms of a one-man offensive machine. And Atlanta's offensive rating has slowly deteriorated from, okay, we're a walking top 10 offense to, can we be a league average offense? And I don't want to make it sound like that's all on Trae. I think some of it's on Trae. I think some of it is poor decision-making from the front office. The DeJounte Murray trade was an absolute travesty. Should have never happened. That fit never made any sense at all. They were literally like the two most ball-dominant players in the league. And they were like, what if we combine them? Made no sense. Also, they paid John Collins like $125 million, which I love John Collins. I think he's a good player. He's not a $30 million player, $30 million a year player. So, and there were some other things in there. The current iteration of the roster doesn't have as many weapons as you'd like on a Trae Young offense. But I guess that can kind of lead us into the other side of things. It takes so much defensive coverage for Trae Young to exist on the court. And that's kind of what I want to leave you with. We can transition this into a defensive conversation. What do you think it is about Trae Young in particular that makes it such an extreme defensive issue in a way that you don't see from other small guards?
Is that outside of every other smaller guard, he's maybe one of the most physically limited, smaller or undersized guards that we've ever seen, because he, over the past couple of years, by the way, smaller guard, he's listed at 6'2". So we're not talking he's really 6 foot. I think he's 6 foot.
I don't really know, but I mean, he's got a neutral wingspan too. That's another part of it.
That's what I was gonna say.
If he's 6'2", it's the smallest 6'2" in the league.
Trae Young, yeah, he's 6'2" at a 6'2" wingspan. Or listed at 6'2" at a 6'2" wingspan.
160 pounds too.
160 pounds. So he can't use any. Okay, let's compare him. And I get it, he's not a small guard, but they have similar strengths and weaknesses, but just different body types. Compare him to Luka, right? Luka is 6'7" with here, I guess, so we can have
Luka's wingspan
comparison.
is 7'2", I'm pretty sure.
Is it really?
His wingspan is absurd. I remember looking into this when he was a rookie. He's got absurdly long arms. Or it's a fake report. But I've seen some crazy numbers for his wingspan.
Okay, for some reason I can't find it.
I don't even know if it's officially recorded, but when I saw it years ago, it said 7'2".
Okay, so when I looked it up, it says the Luka's wingspan is generally reported at 6'11", though some sources mention 6'7" So okay, whatever.
We'll say in that 7 foot range. Yeah,
We'll say 7 foot range. He's 6'7", listed at 7 foot. Mind you, both are bad defenders, and I don't even know why I'm using air quotes. Both are bad defenders. Both are on-ball dominant primary ball handlers that want to operate out a spread pick and roll in isolation, maybe alpha mismatch. The key difference is Luka is 6'7", 250, 230, whatever, with a 7 foot wingspan, which means he has simply more utility defensively. Right? Trey Young, over the past year and a half to 2 years, has noticeably made at least a more of an effort defensively to try, and that's why you'll see the occasional play where he is getting a deflection or, getting an off-ball steal and stuff like that. But he's just so small and so light and with no wingspan whatsoever, where like the effort takes him from being the worst defender in the league to still a bottom 15 defender in the league. The room for error, there isn't any. He goes from, like I said, literally being an F defender to being a D- defender. He's still a god awful defender.
Even because he can do literally everything right and still give up a layup because of just like the fact that he's just so physically overwhelmed.
Where Luka is going to start off probably as a D- defender because at the very least, hey, he's 6'7", he's get a rebound, he has size, and he's a wider dude, right? He has a little bit more muscle mass on him. And then you go from that to Luka at his best defensively is like a slightly below average to a fine defender. Fine. Yeah. Especially in the team aspect. Like a team aspect of things, like away from the ball and stuff like that. Luka has stretches where he's legitimately a like neutral level defender. Well, Trae, you're never going to get there.
I think Luka got a bad rap for the 2024 playoffs specifically because of the Boston series. Like in the 3 rounds leading up to that, he was damn near a plus defender, I feel like. He was a perfectly fine defender for that entire run. It's not physically possible for Trey Young to do that because of what you're talking about.
Get there.
Right, and I think it's insane to think about, like, how many things have to go wrong for it to get to this point with Trey Young. Like, I feel like every limited defender in the league has some redeeming quality where you can point to that and it's like, okay, we can lean into that and maybe try and use that. Like, for example, keeping it to small guards, Jalen Brunson is a very limited defender. He's another guy who has short arms, not vertical, not super quick laterally, but two very, very key traits allow him to just like be somewhat competent. One is like positioning, drawing charges, just putting his body in the right spot at the right time. He's pretty good at that. 2 is the strength. He is absurdly strong for his size. And I think, like, going back to the Boston series in the second round, if you remember, Boston's entire offense is built around mismatch hunting. Like, let's get the switch we want. Let's 5 out. Let's play one-on-one. At the end of that series,
Tatum stuff?
Well, yeah, at the end of that series, the Knicks were like, hey, we're just going to switch Brunson, and we're going to let him play against Jalen or Jason straight up. And they couldn't, like, just bully their way to the paint because Jalen Brunson's a wrecking ball. You can't move the guy.
I remember literally after game 1 and game 2 of that series, me coming out here and say, bro, Jason Tatum, why are you just settling for 20-foot contested twos on Jalen Brunson in the clutch? It's because he can't just move straight through him.
Right, Brunson's got the low center of gravity. He's got the sturdy base. He's holding his ground in those isolations. Whereas you get a Trey Young, and it's like, I was watching the Bulls game recently, and if he got on Josh Giddey, he was getting thrown into the baseline. Josh Giddey's not a particularly strong creator. I mean, he plays physical with his shoulders, but he was throwing Trey. He made Trey Young. He was moving Trey Young like he was Wilt Chamberlain, and I was like, dude, what am I looking at? The Bulls scored 152 points in regulation, by the way, in that game. But their entire late game offense was attacking Trey Young every single play. It was like the epitome of a Trey Young possession that shows why he's so limited. There was a sideline out of bounds play. In the Chicago and Atlanta game, I believe there was like 2 minutes and 45 seconds left. And the Bulls are getting ready. Giddey catches the ball up top. And the Bulls are getting ready to bring Trey Jones up to Giddey with a ball screen so that they can get Trey switched on to Giddey. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker recognizes what's about to happen, and he scrams Trey out of the play. He's like, Trey, you're about to get switched on to Giddey. I'm going to scram you out of the play. It was a great pre-switch. You know who Trae runs out to off the pre-switch? Kobe White. So the Bulls just swing the ball to Kobe White in the corner, clear that side of the floor. Kobe White plays one-on-one and gets a wide-open layup on the possession. And I was like, they just tried to protect Trae Young, and he ended up giving up a layup anyways. And my main point is, like, we are in the era of offenses are going to find the weak link every single time. Look at the conference finals. We already talked about Brunson and Cat. The Pacers were putting them in so much action that Tom Thibodeau had to close games with only one of them instead of both. He had to keep an all-star on the bench during like critical fourth quarter minutes, because if he didn't, it was going to be like double drag with both of them, and there was just nothing they could do. They couldn't switch, they couldn't hedge, they couldn't drop. And it's like you could try pre-switching, but then there's all these creative rotation concepts to get that guy on the play anyways. And not only are offenses attacking weak defenders through the primary action nowadays, they're attacking them with court alignment. Like, there were also plays where Trae Young's matched up with Trae Jones. Trae Jones is like moving around almost in a circle, and then he ends up in the dunker spot while the Bulls run pick and roll, which means the low man tag is coming from Trae Young, who physically cannot contest a shot at the rim. So it's like all of these things happen, and you don't really think about it unless you're looking for it. But like, there are games where Trae Young is directly involved in plays that lead to like 70 points given up. And it's like, you don't think about the extremity of how many points he's bleeding on defense until you go possession by possession. And he has some kind of indirect involvement in every single basket the Hawks give up, whether it's through not helping at the nail, missing a rotation, having a late closeout. Because the last part of this is that he doesn't read the game well defensively, so it's not like he even gets any of that value back as a defensive playmaker. He gets no steals, he gets no deflections. He doesn't draw any charges. There's no redeeming quality in his defense, and that's what makes it such an extreme negative and why it's so different from other small guards. There's nothing you can point to in Trae Young's defensive game and be like, yeah, he does that pretty well. Nothing.
So I have a couple of interesting stats, and these are more lineup and Trae Young related for the Hawks, okay? So let's start off with this. There's two groups that I want to highlight. So the five-man grouping of Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, and Onyeka Okongwu played 45 minutes together this season. Not a lot. Mind you, Trae's been hurt. In those 45 minutes, they have a net rating of negative 19.7, giving up a defensive rating of 128.8, which is freaking absurd. If you take Nickeil Alexander-Walker off the floor and make it a four-man grouping, their offensive rating actually goes up a lot, comparatively speaking. Like, their offensive rating with the four of Trae, Dyson, Onyeka, and Jalen has an offensive rating of 125.5. Tyler, please take a wild guess, just a wild guess, of what the defensive rating is, or no, what the net rating is of that group. Take a wild guess.
Net rating is -9.
Oh, buddy, I wish it was -9. It's a -19.9, meaning that the defensive rating of that group is a 145.5. Now, hold on.
Stops.
One other thing. Take Trae out of that same group. So now it's Dyson, Jalen, Onyeka, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They have an offensive rating of 113.6. So they're not the same offense. Like, Trae's still going to elevate your offense. He's still that offensive floor raiser. But they have a defensive rating of 114.6, which is perfectly middle of the pack in the league. They're an NBA level defense. Give them that rating of -1. Mind you, Tyler, the Hawks are in defensive rating on the year perfectly 16th with a 114.9 defensive rating, meaning that Trae Young tanks this team's defense so bad that in the 263 minutes that Trae Young has played this season, the Hawks have a 129.2 defensive rating with Trae on the floor, which would be good for the worst defense in NBA history. And in the 1,400 minutes that Trae Young has been off the floor this season, the Hawks offense, offensively, the Hawks are, okay, this tracks about middle of the pack, 114 offensive rating, 114.1, which with him off the floor on the season, a 114 flat, which is 18th in the league. And With them off the floor, they have a 113 defensive rating, which would actually be good for the 11th best defense in the league. So,
Yeah.
that's more so just like kind of following up on your point that it almost gets lost how badly Trae impacts your defense on a possession by possession basis. Like the Hawks have perfectly fine to great, depending on which player you want to talk about, defensive talent. It's just that the ball stops when he's on the floor offensively, and then he is the biggest defensive liability in the league right now for anybody that has to play more than 15 plus minutes a night.
Right.
That you literally go from the worst defense in NBA history to, all right, we're not a great one necessarily, but we can put together some stops and be at least an average NBA defense in 2025 or 2026, excuse me.
Yeah, and it really comes down to like we're in an era where one player can be that damaging to a defense. Like in prior eras, it wasn't possible because you could just hide those guys.
5 years ago.
There wasn't as much mismatch hunting. Like the name I always go to when I default to like these like hiding a defender discussions is Steve Nash with the Suns. Steve Nash, like Spurs playoff series. It's like we can throw Steve Nash on Bruce Bowen. Bruce Bowen's not going to do anything all series but stand in the corner. So by putting Steve Nash on, I'm sure he's not going to really add value. I mean, Steve Nash was particularly good at drawing charges. I think he led the league in charges quite a bit. But like besides the occasional charge, he's kind of just going to stand in the corner with Bruce Bowen, maybe make a good help play here and there, and that's about it. Whereas in today's era, Bruce Bowen would be then setting 90 ball screens and running all over the court to get Steve Nash involved in every play. And it's just such a particularly unique signal. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen a statistical signal quite like Trey Young's on either side of the ball. He's such an extreme example of a player who's so limited offensively, but still so elite at what he does because he's such a monster creator and can hit such a great ceiling as a scorer. But then he's such a limited defender that like he almost gives up all of the value back in a way. I want to pull up a graphic to build off of like the sample size of what you're talking about. This actually is like a trend that lasts way longer than just this season. So what we're looking at here is Atlanta's offensive and defensive rating over the last 5 seasons. So we're working with half a decade of a sample size here. With Trae on the court, they're essentially a top offense and a bottom defense, which I think tracks. When Trae Young's on the court, he makes the team so good offensively, but makes them so limited defensively that they can be a top 3 offense, but a bottom 2 defense. And it's just like you're basically just sacrificing one for the other. When he's off the court...
And it's why they are meandering in the 8th seed in the play-in.
Exactly. And then when he's off the court, they're just perfectly adequate on both. They're an average offense and an average defense. Per these numbers, with Trae Young on the court in the last 5 seasons, they've had a negative 0.6 net rating. With him off the court, they've had a negative 0.4 net rating. So we're talking about a team that like has really been indifferent to Trae Young being on the court or not. But I think the more extreme stat, even more so than just the offensive and defensive rating, is flat out what happens to the team overall when Trae Young just isn't even present in the game. Because a big talking point for this season specifically has been the fact that they were 2-8 in Trae's 10 games, and they were 15-13 in the 28 games without him, which is obviously a stark difference, but there's sample size concerns there. Let's do it since he became an all-star in 2019-20. They've played 412 games with Trae, had a 46.6 winning percentage, and in the 90 games they played without Trae, they were a perfect 500, 45-45. And that's not to say Trae's a neutral impact player or negative player. It's just that this is not the signal you would ever get from a franchise cornerstone, true championship caliber building block. It just isn't. And so it raises the question of what a Trae Young like competitive team even looks like at this stage in his career, because you have to hit certain barometers to even make it work. Like because of Trae Young's deficiencies with his own shooting efficiency and some of the issues in the playoffs with the lack of athletic traits, he can't be your number 1 or 2 scorer, I don't think, if you're trying to compete for a championship. But on the flip side, the defensive coverage has to be literally perfect, which means you have to have 2 elite scorers who are also great defenders. Which means, like, that narrows it down to, like, one team in the league, Boston. Boston's the only team I could think of that has, like, perfect defensive coverage and would have enough scoring to make that work. But then also, on the flip side of that, you have to give Trey a bunch of touches or his offensive value is negated because, like you said, he doesn't really have an off-ball game. And then with that, because you're giving him touches, you have to have a pick and roll big on the court because what kind of offense is he going to run if there's not a pick and roll big? And so it's just this really weird dynamic of an extremely talented player who can give you 30 and 10 still, who can do all of these things at such a high level, who will undoubtedly, and we can have this conversation, do so much for Washington's offense, but is so limited in so many ways that, like, it would take perfect roster construction to even put a Trae Young team in 2026 in a position where they can contend.
Yeah. And contend meaning like championship or contend meaning like
Conference
just have
finals?
a serviceable.
Yeah, like, because
Yeah.
the league is a lot different than it was in 2021. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, it's not the same league that Trae Young made a conference finals in.
Now, I do think, like you said, we can kind of make the transition to how Trae's going to help this team and how he's going to help their offense. The Wizards right now, I mean, this is just the easy starting point. And, I mean, hey, the Wizards have already not been a good defense. So, I mean, what's one more bad apple?
I'm pretty sure statistically they're the worst defense of all time before the trade.
I think, yeah. Yeah, they're not good.
So,
Hey, it can't, I mean, shit, I guess it can.
you know what? What if there's some reverse psychology going on and it's like Trae Young allows them to make so many more shots on offense that they can't possibly get worse on defense because they're getting back more? Could Trae Young positively impact the Wizards'
Big
defense?
brain.
Is this case study of the year right here? Trae Young positive defensive influence.
That's going to be a hoop venue video in April when Trae plays 5 games.
How Trae Young transformed the Wizards' defense.
By not playing defense, but just by hitting more shots.
I love that.
They're a bottom 4 defense. Bottom 4 offense, and bottom 4 defense. So Trae, if and when he plays, I guess if and when is still fine.
Well, no, because they did say like he might not play this year.
And I'm like, my first thought is why? Is he like, is the injury stuff like that?
Blatant tanking, I think. I don't even know if he's still hurt.
Yeah, so I'm very puzzled on why he wouldn't play.
Yeah.
But so I'm gonna say if and when for now, if and when Trae does suit up for the Wizards this year, there's gonna be a massive uptake in their offense. Like they're just gonna become a better offensive team because Trae is still a good enough offensive engine to get you bare minimum. We'll just call it middle of the pack offense, right? And historically, over the course of a 7-year career, it's more top 5, top 10 offense. But for right now, we'll call it middle of the pack offense. Dude, he's gonna make some of these guys he's gonna make Trey Johnson's life so much easier because now I think their young guys are all gonna benefit so much, man. Alex Sarr has an elite setup guy now to just get him touches where he wants the ball on pick and pops on easy dump off opportunities at the rim or lob opportunities at the rim or even, post entry passes on mismatches. Like this arguably, I think it is a very realistic possibility that Trae Young, even at his worst, at age 27, Trae Young is going to be the best, playmaker or just initiator that Alex Sarr ever plays with. I think that might not be craziest, and that's more so speaking of how elite still of a passer and setup guy that Trae Young is for his athletic wings and bigs. Like Trae is still elite in that regard. That's probably one of the few things I think Trae is elite at still in 2026. Keyshawn George, who I've openly admitted I was just flat out wrong about, he's going to get more setup opportunities and I think one of the things Keyshawn George is good at is the ability to play off the catch and make secondary decisions. Now you're going to be even more open off the catch and hit the 40% 3 ball and make that connective pass on the second side. Like Keyshawn George, I think Trae is going to come in and day one make all these dudes' lives a whole lot easier, which is just going to speed up and help advance the development process. And if you're the Wizards, I guess this is kind of also just a Wizards conversation in general now about the trade. I think there is, I don't have a negative output or outlook on this trade. There's only one way I think that this can become negative, and I'll just outwardly say it, is if you take this trade, you get whatever you get from Trae this year. Trae picks up his player option next year, and you kind of get fooled and fall in for like a really like a okay season next year. But you're so excited. Hey, we finally have the guy with name level star power still, and you bite and give him like that 4-year max extension going to age 29 season at that point that's going to run through. Trae at 33 might not be an NBA player. I don't even think that's a hot take. Like,
it's not. It's
playable not. NBA guy. I don't think. No, you use
because we've already seen like the burst is not what it was a couple of years ago because of all these he keeps getting these lower body injuries like ankle stuff and I think I can't remember if he had a hamstring at one point or if it was like calf soreness. I don't know, but he's had a lot of lower leg stuff that's really zapped his burst, and he's already such a physically limited player that at age 33, what does he actually look like? I have no clue. I would not want to be locked into that. Is what I'm getting at. But for like everything you said is exactly why I love this move for the Wizards if they play their cards right, because they've got all of these raw off-ball players who have these untapped skill sets. I think Alex Sarr has the potential to be an awesome pick and roll big. Like, I'm not saying he's Anthony Davis, but like you do see some of those shades from like a young AD with the way he uses his size and length around the basket as a finisher. Keyshawn George his life will be so much easier as an off wing and secondary creator. A guy like Bilal Coulibaly will be able to have a lot more functionality on offense because his lack of shooting won't be as prominent of an issue with Trey Young on the court because of his ability as an interior passer. Yeah, you mentioned Trey Johnson. I just think Trey Young is going to help speed up the development of these guys so much. They have the cap space to afford him right now. They have the room to give him all of these touches. And it all just comes down to how you play it over the next few years. Like, I don't necessarily think Trey Young is like Washington's point guard of the future. But like, let's say he doesn't play this year. Let's say they remain the worst team in the East. I think they're last in the East by like a good margin right now. And let's say they get Cam Boozer. So now you get Trey Young also elevating Cam Boozer. And helping him integrate to the league, like next to one of the best playmakers, building all of those off-ball habits and learning how to operate as a big man in those spots. I think Trey Young is like the ultimate transitional player for what Washington's trying to build. Now, long-term, is he your championship point guard? Probably not. It's kind of crazy that I'm talking about championship with Washington. I feel like I've never uttered those two words together ever. But obviously that's the goal when you're building out this young core. But in terms of just like getting these guys the reps that they need for when that roster's in place and they know how to play off of a creator and know how to operate in the right way, that's really intriguing to me. And I do think Trey Young's a great transitional piece. So from that aspect of it, at that price, basically no risk, so much reward. And so I do think this is a rare case of like I don't know if it's necessarily a win for Atlanta, but like I'm not mad at it for Atlanta. Like I do like that they're choosing a direction. I don't like necessarily know about the salary dump. I feel like Atlanta actually has had a history of holding on to assets way too long and then dumping them when they're not worth anything anymore. But
like they wanted value for Trey, they should have done it last year or even the year before. Trade to San Antonio.
Not even getting a pick is crazy to me.
How many times were we talking about, man, Trey and Wemby? Maybe Wemby's the guy that can, hide Trey defensively.
But we don't even know. Maybe the Spurs were ahead of the curve on what we're talking about now, and they saw the defensive concerns. They saw some of the off-ball stuff, and they were like, we don't even want Trey Young.
Yeah.
Because my read on this return is kind of like, is that all they're even like? Did no one else in the league even want him? Because I think I saw a report that it said the Clippers were monitoring the situation, but they have James Harden. Why would they ever were they going to trade James Harden? That didn't make sense to me. Minnesota was one team.
Funniest thing ever.
Yeah. Minnesota was one team that I thought actually kind of made sense, and then a report came out that Minnesota wasn't interested at all. So it kind of seemed to me like
I can understand.
Right, the league was out. You know what would have been fun? I will say, and now I'm just talking BS. This obviously probably would be like kind of ugly in terms of basketball fit, but like, would Trey Young in OKC not be kind of sick to see? Like with all of those defenders and then like Shea having a legit point guard next to him, would that not be kind of sick?
Bro's trying to make basketball not fun for me.
Dude, would that not be kind of cool for like the Trey and Chet pick and roll? I mean, you probably have to trade J-Dub, which I would never do in a billion years. But
what's the trade like? iHeart and that might be too valuable. Apparently, yeah, that's way too valuable.
Yeah, dude. No, going off of what
Isaiah
he went for,
Joe and Aaron Wiggins.
I'd say Dorton Wiggins maybe. Dorton Wiggins.
Isaiah Joe.
Dorton Isaiah Joe. Yeah, I don't know, but
Jalen Williams and Wiggins.
We talked on our last episode. We kind of brought up the Trey Young trade stuff a little bit prematurely at the time because the reports hadn't come out yet. We were kind of ahead of the curve on that one. Pat on the back. We kind of were like, there's not really a destination that makes sense. We were both kind of in that boat, but like after thinking about it, Washington might have made the most sense in the whole league in terms of a team that would benefit the most from adding Trey Young.
And even, I mean, like, if you look at lottery draft stuff right now, or lottery draft simulators, there's mock draft stuff, the Wizards are going to get a top, hopefully. Dude, if the Wizards don't get a top 5 pick, just cry your eyes out.
Yeah.
But in this scenario, you get a top 3 to 4 pick. And even like in the doomsday scenario, where they don't get a top 3 pick, meaning they miss out on Boozer, Debansa, and Darren Peterson. Okay, and Cam Boozer is, I think, pretty clearly the ideal fit. I think if you're Washington, go get him, and now you have him and Alex R together as your front court. But okay, cool. You can't get one of those 3 guys. This draft is loaded with guards, low key. To even if you want to take your lead creator from the point guard spot of the future, there's still stuff I think that they can come in and kind of learn from with Trey for a year. Because if I'm Washington, I'm just viewing this as 2 years. 2 years, let's be a fun, bad team. We're not going to win a lot, because even next year, they're not going to win a lot. Regardless if they get Cam Boozer, regardless of they get point guard of the future, they're not going to win a lot. But they're going to be a fun, bad team that's going to be a lottery team next year still. And then you just get to keep adding onto this young core, and now you're entering 2027 with Alex Sarr, hopefully have emerged, going into year 4. Yeah, going into year 4 at that point. Keyshawn George heading into year 4. Bilal Coulibaly is just established at that point, NBA vet. It would be going into year 6 almost. You know, Trey Johnson entering year 3.
Not to cut you off, but I feel like Bilal's been in the league for like 8 years, dude. And he's
it's kind of weird that he's in Wemby's draft class. I kind of just associate the two until I realized, they were on the same team.
Yeah,
that's kind of crazy. But like, this is a 2-year window mutually. I think especially if I'm Washington, bro. Trey, we're gonna use what we're gonna use you for. Help these young guys kind of develop, whatever. But this is also a 2-year window for you to prove to the rest of the league that you are a valuable asset still. Because in Trey's doomsday scenario, is it crazy to say that the league is kind of just out on Trey Young as a 29-year-old player entering the 2027 free agency? I don't think that's a crazy take.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of good points. I think the Wizard, like, from a fan perspective, it's exciting times to be a Wizards fan because the team is going to be really fun to watch. They're going to play fast. The passing is going to be great. Probably the most fun Wizards team since, like, the John Wall era, which is exciting. They're going to sell tickets.
Low key, that last like Brad Porzingis
Westbrook year.
No, not even that team. The Porzingis year, right before he got traded. That team was sneaky fun. Yeah,
that team was fun. But like, let me ask you this. This is straight BS, but I saw some talks on Twitter. In the spirit of buying low, how would you feel about Washington? Also, basically, like, not giving up any valuable assets and bringing in Zion.
Keep Zion as far away as possible from Alex Sarr. Keep that freak man away from Alex Sarr. You're just going to walk into the Wizards locker room after a game, and instead of it being celebration, it's going to be straight baby oil and lotion at Zion's locker. Like, no, thank you.
I regret bringing up Zion.
Away Keep that man away from poor baby Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly,
Okay.
Trey Johnson, and Keyshawn George. Thank you very
Free
much.
Zion, man. Zion's still my guy. Shout out to Zion Williamson.
That man,
So
actually, you know what? That man has a restraining order. The next time they play the Wizards, he is not allowed 6 feet away.
dude, respect
He
Zion,
has to be
man.
in a bubble. He has to be in a bubble. He can't be anywhere near Alex Sarr.
That's actually you're actually insane for that. You want to talk
You're
about?
insane for bringing it up.
I was talking about basketball, man. I was
No.
talking about Zion. I was talking about
Protect
Zion,
Alex
the freak
Sarr.
athlete lob finisher, and you started talking about
he's a
baby
freak,
hole in the
alright.
locker room, dude.
He's a freak. He has a problem.
Speaking
That
of
man needs to
freaky
be
locker
stopped.
room, speaking of freaky
Alright.
locker room instances, did you see that the Hawks are trying to trade for Anthony Davis?
AD just got hurt tonight.
No, he didn't. No way, dude.
He just hurt his hand. He left the game. He had a hand at dude.
Bro. What do you think the Hawks do from here? Like,
for
I'm
that
intrigued by
reason
the Hawks
alone.
roster. I'm intrigued by the Hawks.
Especially long term. Like there's a pathway. Like this newer regime's been fine. I think they've shown some really, really smart and wise moves. Like for example, they got their guy Ace Newell by trading down and getting this year's draft pick from the Pelicans by trading down 5 spots and still getting the guy you wanted anyway. Like that's a brilliant move. So I think and they'll have 2 first-round picks this year. You know, they're likely to get a top 8 draft pick via the Pelicans. You know, they're going to have the Cavs pick this year as well, which right now is slotted at 16. So you're going to have 2 cracks at a really good NBA player potentially. You're going to enter free agency with a lot of cap space to even if it's not, and it's probably not going to be, even though it's not going to be this elite level player, it's just guys that you can spend $20 million on, kind of like how they did with Nah, to just build around Jalen Johnson and Dyson. And I like Zachary Risache, I do, but I would feel a little bit differently about this team if that was Alex Sarr. I feel a lot differently about this team without Sarr. Or, if you did a redraft, that's maybe Castle, even one of those 2 guys.
Stephon Castle with that Atlanta team would be exciting. That athleticism would be crazy.
Yeah. But Dyson, Ace Newell, Kristaps is expiring, I think, too. Entering the summer. Yeah. So in terms of their core and the guys that you're really, really worried about making sure you bring back and you want to build around is Jalen, Dyson, Onyeka, Nah. By the way, that's nobody. Only one dude is 2 dudes are making over $25 million. That's Dyson and Jalen, and none of them crack over 30. So I think they're in a really good spot. They're young. They're athletic. They have a lot of the connecting pieces, and the Hawks are another team, bro, where slot AJ DeBance on this team, and let's go. Or slot a lead guard in that can actually play off the ball, they just need somebody to not be the biggest defensive liability in the NBA, and they are cooking on defense. And
they are, yeah.
Have some versatility offensively with your skill set. Jalen Johnson's developed into a guy that you can legitimately run offense through. Nah and Dyson provide enough from the guard spot. You can bring in somebody else to, maybe be your more traditional table setter off the bench. Loki is the first name that pops in my head. Ty Jerome, not a free agent in the summer, but Ty Jerome on this team, cool beans for $10 million to play 20 minutes a night, perfectly fine. So I like the direction with you still have Zachary Risache as this off ball wing that can shoot, play off the catch. I like the Hawks' direction. I'm glad they chose one. And now you can enter a really interesting offseason and development and some luck. The Hawks are gonna be fun still next year even.
You didn't even bring up the world's greatest defender, Mohamed Gay. That dude is a freaking hooper.
I did not
man.
bring up Mohamed Gay.
That is my favorite player on Atlanta's roster right now is Mohamed Gay. That guy is awesome. What a watch he is. If you ever catch his 10-minute stints throughout an entire game, it is the highest energy defense you'll ever see in your life. It's like Jonathan Isaac on steroids. Mohamed Gay is awesome. But Atlanta's direction is just so interesting. It's kind of and it really encompasses the state of the modern NBA, where teams are leaning into versatility over anything. And Atlanta's just stacking all of these big, lengthy athletes who can play 3 or 4 positions. So they get this very these positionless looking lineups out on the court where it's like Vit Krejci, who could be 1 through 3. It's Alexander Walker, who can be 1 through 3. It's Dyson Daniels, who could be 1 through 3. It's Jalen Johnson, who could be 1 through 4. It's Okongwu, who could be 3 through 5. And it's like they just operate in such like a they play a very futuristic style of basketball with the way they move the ball, with the way they screen, cut, crash the offensive glass, with the way they switch everything on defense and play the gaps. It just feels like they're really just missing like the pieces are there. They just need to upgrade the talent level across the board. And that could just be a couple moves on the margins. That could be a couple, like maybe you just need another 25 point per game scorer who's efficient. How would we be talking about this current Atlanta team? And obviously this is unfair to do because it's like this isn't a real scenario. But let's say in a magical made up world, Trey Young was Anthony Edwards. Like, how would we be talking about that Atlanta team if it was Dyson, Ant, Nah, Jalen Johnson, Okongwu, Chris Stapps? Like, would that not be like close to a championship contender?
Yeah, I think that would be a champion. I mean,
Or
they're
like
missing
Devin Booker? Like, even if it was like Devin Booker
yeah. I would say they're
or
clearly
Donovan
missing
Mitchell.
like Donovan Mitchell, yeah, Book even like any of those guys. I would say for any of those guys, hey, let's have another like guard off the bench that could come in and like make life easy for everybody.
Right.
But that's the one thing that would kind of sway me from championship contender. But I would push the needle pretty hard if that's the championship contender.
And that's what you were saying, like with like if Darren Peterson or Debansa's available and they pop off as your number one and they pan out, it's like all of a sudden Atlanta's team just looks incredible. Because of the way they've sharpened the edges of the roster and the leap that Jalen Johnson's taken this year. Yeah, they're a super fascinating team, but like in that same line of thinking, like the modern NBA style, like the positionless basketball, the lengthy athletic wings, you kind of already answered my question earlier about like the small guard thing. You kind of think it's just a Trey Young problem, but there is still something to be said. And maybe it's like a defensive liability problem more than it is a small guard problem. But like there was a trend, right? There was like a transitional period. I would say it started around like 2016, 2017-ish, and it lasted until like 2022 where it was like actually, I mean, you could even go before that with certain teams, but the guy I'm thinking of is Andre Robertson, where it was like there was a clear obvious like Andre Robertson is like at worst the third best wing defender in basketball. At best, he's the best wing defender in basketball in 2016, 2017, 2018. But he is such a uniquely limited offensive player that when it got to the playoffs, you would have to sacrifice so much just to get him minutes, just to get him on the court, just to close games with him. And then you had even like better versions of offensive players that played a similar role that would struggle to stay on the court at times. I think a couple names that come to mind are like I guess PJ Tucker would be a good one of guy that like he was all his entire role in offense was just a stationary corner three. And if the shot wasn't falling, there was no value there because he wasn't treated as a floor spacer. But you get what I'm saying? There was a trend of offensive liabilities getting played off the court to the point where the only offensive liabilities who play in the playoffs now are like generational defenders. Like it's like Draymond Green and Rudy Gobert. That's it. The other offensive liabilities, they just don't get minutes. I think we're starting to get to a transitional period where it's like if you aren't a tier 1 or 2 offensive player and you're a drastically negative defender, you aren't going to be on the floor in the playoffs much. And that's going to create this really interesting like where we kind of have to assess the value of certain players and where they stand in the league. Like immediately my mind goes to Tyler Hero. Like what is his value? Like after seeing Trey Young's trade return, what does Tyler Hero's value look like? Because obviously Tyler Hero isn't nearly as detrimental defensively as Trey, but he is still a detrimental defender while not being anywhere near the creator, but then also being an elevated off-ball player. So it's really interesting to see where the league goes from here with archetypes. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think that's a fair assessment? Like, do you think bad defensive players are being phased out of the league?
I think Slowly, yeah. Like if you're somebody that just provides no or very little defensive value, or just value on either side of the floor, is that kind of better? Or
Yeah.
one side of
Well,
the
because
other.
the offensive shift has already happened, where it's like if you're limited offensively, you're not going to play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that's because defensive scheming reached a level where those players could not play. Like we're going to put a center on you, he's going to sit in the paint the entire game, and you just can't do anything.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten to a point where offensive scheming has gotten so advanced that weak defenders have that same sort of negative impact that you see from like the weakest offensive players, where they're just like bleeding value every possession.
Yeah, and then it's to the point. It's to the point now where, okay, even if you're in a situation like Trey, where you are this, in your prime, this whatever's like a step below. He's not is because it's not generational, but like we'll just go superstar level offensive creator. That's gonna be this, the the driving force behind a top three, top five, top eight offense. It gets to the point where it's always gonna lead to a situation like this because you're just a net neutral team. Very, very clearly. You are in different team because like you said earlier, it's just gonna feel like, all right, cool, we're scoring a lot, but we're giving up 125 and you're in these offensive slugfest where you can't miss. It's gonna feel like most nights because if you do miss, it's gonna lead to transition buckets or it's gonna lead to almost guaranteed bucket for them because you're this clear defensive weakness. I think it's a little bit more nuanced. I think because I think if you are just this clear liability where there's nothing tangible or nothing there at all, I don't think we've advanced to the point where, example, I'm going to go back to the Luka example, right? Clear bad defender. He's not a good defender. I'm not even going to pretend like he is. But I don't think we've advanced to the point where, and it's kind of the same for the other side. If you flip it, like bad offensive players, I think it's a little bit defensive have countered it still to where you can still be neutralized for some of the smaller stuff you can do offensively, even though you're like this inefficient. You're not a scoring threat. You're not a shooting threat. Defensive have kind of been able to figure out, okay, how we want to play the screen game if you become a screener or a pass or a DHO initiator. I don't think we've got to that point yet defensively where offense to be able to figure out, again, using the Luka point, all right, a locked-in Luka that is a bad on-ball defender, right? We could just completely take out the fact that you're a good rebounder, positional rebounder. When you're playing with great effort, you're going to be active in the passing lanes. You have a good basketball IQ, so you'll be able to get some steals or some deflections that lead to runouts. I don't think we've fully advanced there yet. The day we advance there, all right, defense is just cooked. We are screwed. Because that means offense is just advanced to a different point. Does that make sense? I don't know 100%. When we'll get there.
But it also makes me think about like other defensively limited players and what they'll look like in a deep playoff run. Like my mind immediately goes to Darius Garland because I think Darius Garland is a much better defender than Trae Young. But he has all of what we're talking about in terms of he's short, has short arms, can't get up vertically, and is really physically weak. So like if you put him in these specific matchups, it almost feels like he's getting played off the floor a lot of the time. Like if he gets into a playoff series against a Boston or a New York or an Indiana. And that it's really tough. And then, but it's also like, I want to give credit to the small guards or the limited defenders who have taken serious strides and like legitimately look like they offer serious resistance now. Like Tyrese Maxey looks like a quality defender this season. Not that he's like a positive defender or going to make an all defensive team, but like you don't watch a Sixers game and you're like, wow, Tyrese Maxey's really just damaging Philly's defense on a possession by possession basis right now. And it's like, I think there are small guards who are even still good defenders in the league. TJ McConnell, good defender. Fred VanVleet before he was hurt, good defender. But yeah, there is something to be said about even like if TJ McConnell gets into a playoff series against Boston, what does that look like? If Fred VanVleet gets into a playoff series against Denver, what does that look like? Because Denver's huge, and now Peyton Watson's a ball handler. Um, it's I just think, yeah, I really think, and let me bring this to a final point. I also think Peyton Pritchard's a pretty solid defender for being a smaller guard, and again, that's 30 base and also buy in and things like that. Point I'm trying to get at, if you look at all of the past like finals teams and champions and contenders, these weak defenders don't exist on the team, or they're like misconstrued as such. Like I think Steph Curry gets grouped into this, where I'd say Steph Curry's been a slight plus defender since like 2015. Like Steph Curry's a perfectly fine defender. He can hold up on the ball, he can get around screens, and he's super smart with team rotations and passing lanes. So like you can't just like pick on him over and over again. Teams that try to pick on him usually aren't successful because of Golden State's team defense, and Steph plays into that. But like look at the last few champions. 2020 Lakers, or actually you can go back even before that. You can go back to like, okay, let's start at the 2017 Warriors. They didn't play a single defensive weak link. 2018 Warriors, same thing, didn't play a defensive weak link. 2019 Raptors, didn't play a defensive weak link. 2020 Lakers, didn't play a defensive weak link. 2021 Bucks, all defenders, just their entire roster was defenders. 2022 Warriors, all defenders again. Granted, and Steph Curry's offensive skill set allows you to put nothing but defenders in the court. You could play Draymond and Looney together because of Steph Curry. 2023 Nuggets are the one team where it's like they don't have just a bunch of defenders, because even you go to 2024 Celtics, all defenders. 2025 Thunder, don't even get me started on the defenders of the 2025 Thunder. 2023 Nuggets are the one team that you look at and it's like, okay, this team wasn't constructed of a bunch of defenders, but they were just an unguardable offense. Their offense was obscene. 2, they were the biggest team in the league. They were huge. So even if you could pick on that, like certain guys individually defensively, as a collective, they clogged up so much space and closed so many possessions on the glass that, and just had so much length and versatility that it didn't really matter. So I feel like the recipe has trended more and more towards, you just don't see teams win championship with weak links, and you don't see teams win championships with small players. And that's where things are getting really, really interesting for me. And I kind of want to see
small primary players.
Small primary players, yeah, because you got like your Peyton Pritchards of the world on the championship Celtics. But even like Isaiah Joe didn't play much in the playoffs for OKC, and he's kind of the only small guy in that roster. And when I say small, I mean small and not lengthy. Like Cason Wallace isn't small, even though he's like 6'3". That's not a small player. I think it's really interesting, and it makes me wonder like what the future looks like for the Rob Dillinghams of the world. Like these players who clearly have a ton of talent, but have these physical limitations that if they get into a playoff series, they're going to be forced to defend 80 different plays.
I just want one thing to say to wrap, because it's funny. It really is more so like, dude, Trey's just not this player anymore. Danny Green, his reaction to the trade is that the Wizards robbed the bank. Hold on. I actually had it and then I lost it. Hold on.
Robbed the bank.
Which, and the point I was really about to get towards was more or less like, dude, all right, and this was 2022 trade we're talking about? Sure. The Wizards robbed the bank, or what is Danny Green's podcast name? Very frustrating.
Yeah, not sure.
Yeah, you're not tapped in with the Danny Green podcast? How dare you?
I'm not. I would assume if I was Danny Green, my podcast would be named something with 3 and D, because Danny Green is like the king of 3 and D. But I don't know if Danny Green has got the marketing like that.
It's Inside the Green Room. Man, that's okay.
Give me the 3 and D podcast.
The Wizards robbed the bank clean with no weapons. That's what he said.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see how it plays out. What if Trey Young does get back to 2022 level? Like, who are we to say that can't happen? It's not like he's old. He's 27. It could happen. So I don't want to rule that out. But like to really bring this conversation home, Trae Young, maybe
You're
the most
quite the
polarizing
optimist.
player in basketball besides Paolo Banchero. Paolo Banchero is the most polarizing player in basketball. Trae Young's a close second. Um, Super unique skill set, super elite at what he does. Great. But then so extremely limited in certain areas that the impact signal is just so wonky where certain games he looks like an MVP, certain games he looks like you can't even win 30 games with him. Who knows what's going on? But Washington is the one team where it's like we've got all these off-ball talented players, we've got these young prospects. We need a legitimate engine to help unlock these skill sets. And they bought low. They hit a home run with that. And I think it's an exciting time for basketball in Washington and Atlanta. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the conversation?
I think I was one of the last people on the Trae Young Island. I got left. I am
You
no
did.
longer I'm no longer with everybody. Yeah, because I remember doing a video on my channel actually it would have been 2 seasons ago, saying Trey was the most underrated player in the league. And in the time, I still like stand on that, but I think it just like he has regressed even in the past year and a half or so, and the league has continued to kind of ramp up on the trends that we've talked about throughout this episode. So I think Washington's gonna be fun. I'm definitely gonna be tapped in when Trey does suit up for Washington. And I mean, I think really the last thing I'm gonna say is again, the league is in such a fun place, like talent wise. Like there's not a
Yeah, it
team
is.
right now in the league that I can legitimately okay, maybe Sacramento. That team's just mid and boring. But okay, outside of Sacramento, hell, even the Pelicans were 8-31. There's not a team in the league that can say I'll watch and I'm just bored, or there's nothing kind of exciting to look forward to. The Pelicans have their young prospects in Trey Murphy, and you'll get your occasional Zion blow up. The Jazz are one of my most exciting bad teams in the league. The Clippers
Yeah.
are still the Clippers, even though they're 13-23. The Blazers are competitive in the play-in spot. I'm only really highlighting. I shouldn't have said the Clippers. Now I think about it, but only really highlighting the teams that have been like historically bad recently. The Nets are like sneaky a few games out of the play-in. The Hornets are such a fun offense to watch.
Yeah.
Specifically offensively, there's one the probably my favorite team to watch. This kind of in the bad conversation. Washington's not going to be exciting. Indiana on any night could be a really, really fun watch. And we know what their potential is when they get healthy. The talent base in the league is so exciting and fun. And you're just going to continue to add to that with a great 2026 draft class. I mean, the league is talent-wise never been better. So, and more spread out, which I guess is, I'm not going to praise the CBA, but,
I was ready to do the outro, and then you said something that really caught my attention. So I thought of an even better way to wrap this up. You
Okay.
said I can't remember your exact wording, but you said something about like the league tides are kind of changing on Trey Young in a negative fashion. Like the perception of who he is as a player since 2022 has really been altered. And I want to mention another guy who the perception is being altered on. The tides are changing. The people are waking up in 2026. Have you seen the way Rudy Gobert is being talked about right now? Have you seen it? Please tell me you've seen it.
Recording stopped. No way.
Dude,
no way we're
please-
ending this.
Please tell me you've seen it.
I
Rudy
have not.
Gobert is on there is a propaganda machine going on right now on Twitter for Rudy Gobert. And I have been cheesing on this app every day, dude, seeing a new Rudy Gobert post. And then the rivalry matchup with Bam, where Bam said Rudy can't guard me. And then the clip went viral of him cooking Rudy, and I thought that we're right back to square one. Then every post was like, nah, Rudy destroyed you in this matchup. And all I saw was the stats. Oh, dude, I was cheesing. Like, do you know how good it feels to be like a 2019 Rudy Gobert truther? To see the tides changing in 2026 and Rudy Gobert's defensive player of the year odds just like skyrocketing to where like he's in a position to win his fifth. That's how I want to end this episode, because we're not going to do a whole episode on this, obviously, but I had to get that off my chest. Shout out to Godzilla.
So they posted the one clip. I mean, I haven't watched. I didn't see it, but they're posting the one clip of Bam scoring on Rudy when he shot 3 for 11 with 7 points.
It was a 2-game stretch.
And Rudy had 13 and 16 with 2 blocks.
It was a 2-game stretch, and Bam had a combined, I think it was 19 points and like 8 of 24 shooting. And there were like clips going around of Bam cooking Rudy for a clip, and then him saying he can't effing guard me. And then everyone was like, no, he can't effing guard you. And then posting the clips of him clamping him. And then his Defensive Player of the Year odds went up. Then I saw like an 8-paragraph tweet about Rudy Gobert's historic career from like an actual media source. Bruh. So let's give some appreciation.
A Timberwolves media source, potentially?
Nope. Clutch Points, which I don't even know if that's a media source, but it's it counts. It counts, dude.
Boo, this guy stinks.
It counts, man. I'm like, no, it came from a reputable media source, Hoop Venue. It came from Hoop Venue, dude. No,
it came from Tyler _ Britton.
Yeah, it came from Tyler. Speaking of Tyler _ Britton, make sure to follow us on social media. I'm on all platforms at Tyler Britton _ actually, and Hoop Venue on all platforms. Sean's on Twitter at Sean _ DAVI for all your Rudy Gobert propaganda. He's on Instagram at Sean _ Davis 23.
I don't even dislike
on YouTube
Rudy.
At the Los Angeles Lakers Network and the Sports Headline Show. We really appreciate you guys listening. 27 points, 24 rebounds. We'll catch you guys next time in episode number 71.